Good evening, dear viewers, and welcome to the Inderes Life Science Night. My name is Antti Siltanen. I'm an equity analyst and an analyst focused on life science equities. I will be giving the opening remarks tonight and also moderating the questions, so please keep sending your questions to the companies via the chat function. So let's take a look at the listed life science companies in Finland. Basically, we have about 15 listed companies. They can be roughly split to two categories: pharma and drug development companies and health technology companies. So from the two drug development companies, both Faron Pharmaceuticals and Herantis Pharma are presenting here tonight. We have one slightly bigger pharma company, Orion, and Nanoform, who are developing drug formulations for existing drugs. From the health technology sector, we have Aiforia Technologies, who are developing artificial intelligence solutions for digital pathology. We have companies from orthopedics, ophthalmology, neurostimulation, biomedical lasers, diagnostics, imaging, and biosignaling measurements. If you look at the profile of these companies as a whole, they're mostly early-stage small-cap companies. So about half of the companies' market cap is above 100 million euros, and only a few companies have revenues higher than 100 million. So the profile is early stage. Some of the characteristics of life science companies as investment. So firstly, these companies are often stemming from academia and commercializing innovations, and sometimes because of these companies are perceived as difficult to understand, but we do our best to kind of inform investors and help to make informed decisions on these companies. The environment is usually strongly regulated, so the companies need to get marketing authorization from the regulators, and that often takes a lot of time and effort to get there. The market usually, once the companies access the market is usually global and somewhat conservative. So the doctors, who are typically the customers, they are very careful to only accept very high quality, effective, and safe treatments and products for their patients. And early stage companies typically have very high potential, they are risky and usually unprofitable. And when the companies get to mature stage, they are often very defensive and highly profitable. So when young companies are accessing markets, they have some barriers to get to the market. So one major barrier are R&D risks. So for example, if a drug candidate is not effective enough, the development program may be ended before market authorization. By funding, the companies usually need large upfront investments, so a lot of funding is required upfront. And the market, as mentioned, is a little bit conservative, so new innovations are usually a little bit slowly taken up by the market. But once these young companies turn into more mature companies, these barriers become moats. So more mature companies are often highly profitable and have a very, very defensive position. There are some very strong trends behind the life science companies. Typically, aging population is increasing the number of patients all the time by a few % each year, who are increasingly needing products and services by health tech and pharma. The need for new treatments is always high and increasing. There's always need for more safer, more effective treatments and medications. There's also increasing pressure on budgets in developing countries, so cost-saving solutions are coming increasingly important. When we look at the big picture, both the pharmaceutical market and medical technology markets are huge. They are growing at about 5% per year annually, and it's a very defensive and predictable growth. So what does a strong life science company look like? One indication of an excellent company is that it has a value-adding product for both patients and other stakeholders, and it usually has already market authorization and strong IPR for the products. It's an advantage if the company is first to market, but this is not necessary. But if a company is not first to market, it has to show improved efficacy, safety, and or cost savings to then win the existing solutions and gain competitive edge. Financials for growth is secured for a strong company, and this enables the company to focus on its growth strategy and kind of in other ways the company management may need to kind of put a lot of focus on gathering funding. And sales and marketing capabilities need to be in place to be able to then grow with an excellent product. So if you look at the funding environment, there has been some quite big changes over the past few years. So following the COVID crisis, there was kind of a liquidity surge to the market, which showed in 2020 and 2021 in increased funding and in increased numbers of IPOs. And since then, after the increase in inflation, an increase in interest rates, there have been quite a quick slowdown in funding, which is now slowly getting better, but still at a lower level compared to the previous years. So for funding of the companies, as mentioned, the companies usually have lengthy R&D and regulatory pathways, which take up a lot of funding. So it's essential to have strong funding. The growth, once the company gets to market, the growth typically realizes over time, first by the first product and then through indication expansion and broadening of the product for portfolio. But this usually takes a number of years to then reach cash flow positivity. Then at mature stage, those companies that are kind of big and dominating the market, they are generating a lot of cash, and they're usually quite hungry for innovation and looking for smaller companies to buy. And this creates potential for the small companies, for M&As and lucrative licensing deals. So in terms of valuation, as expected, the early stage companies are typically loss-making. This means that we cannot use for valuation earnings multiples. So typical tools are net present cash flow calculations by DCF or discounted cash flow models. And then often we also look at the revenue-based multiples for those companies that are generating revenue. And we also look at the sector peers to compare valuations to other similar companies in the field. Because of this limited tool set, the valuation by definitions is a little bit less accurate compared to more mature stage companies. And the multiples that we are seeing, for example, in revenue-based multiples, they are typically quite high because the companies have big potential for both growth and earnings potential. But this also creates risk when you combine negative cash flows with high multiples. We think timing matters when investing in early stage companies. So there are usually high growth expectations combined with high multiples, and sometimes a conservative uptake of innovations into the market. Also, cash flows are often negative, which creates need for share issues or other funding rounds and pressure to increase the number of shares. Here's one example of a company called Tela Bio. They IPO'd in 2011. They have been growing very fast, but unfortunately the share return has not been good because of increase in share numbers. But then more positive case here, Kuros Biosciences. They have also grown rapidly during the past few years, and once they kind of started to reach cash flow turnaround, their stock became a 10 bagger in a matter of 12 months. So this kind of highlights the excellent potential in investing in these companies. So to sum up some of the strengths and opportunities for life science stocks, they are usually going straight to the global market that are growing and very, very defensive markets. The R&D pipeline, once the company has success in commercializing the products and getting regulatory approvals, winning market share, that creates moats for the companies, and they have usually very strong position in the market by then. There's really good potential for high profitability. Typically, gross margins are very high, and also the companies have usually low capital requirements once in the commercial stage. There's potential for being M&A targets, and also landing lucrative licensing agreements. And in the long term, there's usually possibility for very long-term profitable growth, and the customer stickiness is very high because of the defensiveness. And some weaknesses and threats in the markets. The R&D risk, especially for biotech companies, may be very high. So if, for example, the efficacy of a drug candidate is not good enough, the asset may be written down. Market authorizations are sometimes lengthy, and that's a barrier to market. There's a need for upfront investments, as mentioned, and the revenue growth is sometimes very gradual, taking a few years to reach cash flow positivity. And at some point there will be competition via new innovations. Thank you very much for listening, and let's take our first company, Aiforia Technologies.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Jukka Tapaninen. I'm the CEO of Aiforia. So there's a huge digital transformation going on in pathology. So moving from a manual to automated to digital to AI, and there are clear reasons why this transformation is happening. So there's a huge demand. So there's about 3 billion glass plates that needs to be digitized and diagnosed as well. So there's a lot of a demand. So and all the megatrends like the aging population and so on. So they are driving the demand. So there are unfortunately more and more cancer cases coming up. Plus we are studying those more carefully. And at the same time, so in a world, so there's about 100,000 pathologists, and the number is not going up. Actually, it's decreasing a little bit. So there's a huge growing gap between the demand and actually kind of a resources to take care of that workflow. So that's going on. The demand is there. So and from Aiforia's perspective, so it's an interesting market to be because we are not actually building the demand. So it's a market that the customers are actually having a kind of a active problem recognition, and they are actively looking for solutions for their problems. So it's an interesting market. The other big thing to notice is when this big transformation is happening, because it has been going on for years. So there was early adopters, and now we see that there's a kind of a demand picking up from a bigger kind of a clinical customers. So I think we are now having the technologies in place, and then also the organizations, hospitals, researchers, clinics are actually noticing that now the AI is in a level and the digitization is in a level so that it really benefits for them. So it's going on, and I'll go more in the details a little bit later. So big transformation, we are moving people diagnosing things from a microscope to digital, so and providing a quantitative analysis, ready-made reports, and of course showing in a digital form where the issues are. So, but this is the transformation which is going on. And role for Aiforia in this process. So there are obviously multiple other players in the same workflow. So because you have the physical samples coming in from a patient, so you need to prepare those. You need to put some staining so that you can get the things out from that material. You digitize, then you share the images. And Aiforia's role in this process is really to kind of support the pathologists to make their diagnostic decisions. So as said, so we show in a big picture so where the issues are, and we also do a quantitative analysis. So we put everything in a numeric form, and then we provide a ready-made report for pathologists to verify. So I think that's the kind of a key part of this process, so that we help to kind of get the value out from this workflow. And when the diagnosis has been done, so then it goes to a next step, which is the treatment decision with the doctor who gives the treatment decision. But this is the process. And when talking about AI, because I think it's important to clarify here as well. Nowadays, everybody talks about AI, so it's a big thing. So everything is AI. So it can mean so many different things. So it can be the work list and prioritization tools, so that so you have the kind of most important cases first and so on. So that's one thing. The other thing is that what most of the competition is doing. So they are building a heat map, so and giving a picture to pathologists and show where potentially the most risky parts are. So and they can they still need to do the kind of diagnosis manually. So figure it out from that picture what is there, and do the diagnosis. And then the next level is the quantitative analysis, so that you have the picture, but you have also the numeric form. So you do the quantitative analysis and you provide the report. And I think the next one, so which is already a reality, so not too many models in the market. We have one done together with Mayo Clinic last year, so it's called QuantCRC for colorectal cancer. So and they combined Aiforia's AI to do the calculations and do the diagnostic support, and then combining that with the 8,000 patient cases and building a predictive algorithm. So and now they can predict what is the patient outcome. So and based on that information, so they can provide they can make a decision. So what how much chemotherapy, for example, the patient is getting. So there are a lot of benefits on that. So because a lot of side effects from a chemo, and it's good for the patient, but also financially it's interesting because in the US there is about $10,000 per month for chemo, and they calculate it out so that they can actually downgrade the treatment for 30% of the patients. So meaning that so going from a 6 months chemo to 3 months chemo and so on. So good for the patient and good for the hospital and economy overall. But so different levels of AI that companies are providing. This is an old slide from a Gartner from actually 23. So I think this is no news to anybody. So that the AI is there, whatever you do. So AI is involved. So and there's a huge spending going on. And that impacts to us as well, because there are multiple vendors in a same market providing different things. But what we have noticed that the customers are actively kind of looking for AI solution and diagnostic support, and that impacts on the other decisions that they take. So what type of image management system, so what type of scanners they want to have. So AI is driving now that decision. And okay, so this is a slide with a lot of numbers and information, but I try to explain because many times people have asked so that you have closed really nice deals, so and when the money starts coming in. So we took one kind of a customer example here. I'm not be able to tell the customer name, so but it's a real case. So that how much we expect that particular customer bringing revenue for Aiforia. And it's ramping up because we typically start small and a couple of AI models, couple of sites, and then when that gets in a volume, so then we start ramping up. So and then in a 3, 4, 5 year period, so then we start getting significant revenues from those customers. And the good thing is that this is almost like an ERP system implementation, meaning that once you get it done, so it's up and running, so it's not likely that the customers are switching to something else. So now it's really important to capture those good customers at this point of the time, so and then work with those customers and ramp up the volumes on their sides. But yeah, just as a numeric example of how the revenues will come in the future. And this is just kind of a more detailed explanation about the market growth. The fastest growing areas are the image management systems and AI in the middle, and the market is growing quite nicely. So, but this is the combination that when you have a hospital that really picks up this topic, so they need to start this. They can start with the AI and image management systems, but they need to have scanners as well, a small number first, but they need to grow as well so that they can handle the volume. So, but all of these somehow goes together. I think the software piece is the laboratory information system, image management, and then the AI. So, and typically customers want to buy those as a one package. So what is our offering? So company is a bit over 10 years old, and I'm not going to go through the history lengthy way, but saying that, okay, in 2020, so 5 years after the starting the company, so we entered the clinical market, and clinical is the one that there's a huge need and huge volume, and we expect that there's a lot of money as well available on that side. But we started with building a Aiforia Create, which is a development tool, so that we enabled pathologists to build their own AI models. And that is a solution that was widely accepted and used in the market. So that's why we have over 5,000 users in 50 different countries. A lot of researchers and universities and other institutions were using it. And that was giving us a good kind of starting point, because there's a lot of scientific documents coming out, and Aiforia has a fantastic reputation. And the same people who are working on those research groups typically work also in a hospitals, decision makers on that side, which helps us. But then fast forward on 2020, so we started to enter the clinical side of the business, and we did the IPO in 21. And we also kind of started to build the portfolio more ready AI models. We have now 6 different CE IVD mark solutions, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. So, but we have now the offering, we have now the flagship customers on that side. So, and the business is ramping up. But that started in 2020, even though the company started 5-6 years earlier building the technology platform. So, and as a company, what we are really proud of is the team what we have. So we have the technology team, so which is really top notch, and we have a science team really in depth in the pathology, so providing and can build those models. And nowadays we have a very good sales team as well. So that was not the case a couple of years back. So, but we've been investing on a go-to-market activities as well. So we are still serving the research side, because as said, so there are many times combined to each other, so clinical and research sector. And this is really important. Now, if you compare to any other company in the same market, we are clearly a leading one. So, and what I'm meaning by leading one is that, okay, so who has really sold these solutions, implement the solution, and have a customers who are using it. Meitä was the first big one already a couple of years ago. So they have a prostate models in a production. There's 70 pathologists working with the Create tool to build their own AI models, and we have this prognostic model also coming with the Meitä collaboration. But top of that, so there's a lot of a demand, a lot of public tenders going on in Europe. So we won the biggest hospital group in Europe, so which is APHP in Paris. And starting with the 2 hospitals with a couple of AI models, but the opportunity is the 38 hospitals overall. And so that's a big one. So we won Castile y León in Spain, a couple of regions in Italy. Last time I spoke about the Veneto, but worth of mentioning is that it's a 5.5 million people. It's the same size as Finland. So 12 hospitals, now we have implemented to 8. And next thing, they start ramping up the volume with the different kind of doing a kind of acquisition for scanners. But this is a fantastic case for us, and there's 15 other regions in Italy. So we actually have 5 with Aiforia at the moment. So, and there are of course a lot of open sales cycles going on. NHS we won last year. And today, so we put the press release out, so we won an interesting new customer in Turkey, the biggest private hospital there, so and a really advanced hospital, so that's a new opening. So a lot of AI models, so there are thousands already done in a research side. Because of the time, I'm not going to go too much on a detail on this. On a clinical suite, so this is where we are focusing on building an offerings for lung and breast and prostate and so on. So and this is a really interesting one. So and customers are actually driving our development pipeline. So we won a big deal with the FimLab earlier this year. So there's a lot of AI models that we are providing for them. So and multiple other customers are asking always something new. So we built something new based on the real customer demand. This is an interesting picture for pathologists for sure, and for you as an investor, maybe that showing that this is a prostate model, so that we can really go in a detail. So we can give a Gleason grading, we can populate that report, and the report is interesting in that sense, so that pathologists just need to verify the information that AI has generated. And if the pathologist is confirmed that it's okay, so just click and then it goes to laboratory information system and for the treatment decision. This is the model that we built with the Mayo, so prognostic model, not going on details too much on that. A lot of regulation, so heavily regulated sometimes, yes, bit frustrating that so you need to do all of those things. The positive side is that so that's really a barrier of entry for this business as well. And we have done all of these. So we have the security certification. So we have different ISOs and HIPAA compliance for the US market. We have moved forward with the FDA progress project and also the IVDR solutions are coming shortly in the market as well. So, but there's a lot of things that you need to do in this area. So, as I said earlier, the market is really moving from an early adopter phase. Now I see that what is happening. So we have these bigger flagship hospitals, and we intend to win as many as possible on those, and obviously the next phase, at least in a theory, is that so it will be a volume market. So the volume market needs a little bit more mature solutions so that you can replicate more easily. So and maybe some consolidation in the market as well, so that it's easier to buy and easier to sell. Currently, what we see is that everybody wants to partner. So whether it's a Google, whether it's a Hologic, whether it's any of the big companies, everybody wants to partner, and they want to partner with the AI companies because they don't have their own offering on this side, but it drives the demand for their own solutions. So there's a lot of things happening, and obviously I think the M&A type of things are possible opportunities as well in some point of a time. Targets, same as before, and what we did in IPO, so we promised multiple things, and so far we've been able to provide, and we are really happy and proud on that, so that we've been able to deliver what we've been promising. So and obviously going forward, so that's our intention as well. But I guess I end my presentation here, and happy to take some questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Jukka, and please have a seat.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we have quite many questions, so let's see if we can go through them all. So let's start with the general questions. Which milestones at Aiforia are you most proud of, and have there been some mistakes during the way, and why? What are the main milestones and why?
Well, I think if I need to mention a couple of those, so one is obviously, so when we did the IPO in 2021 in December, so we promised that we will bring 6 CE IVD marked solutions into market, and we managed to do that in 6 months. So meaning that our development platform works well, and we have a fantastic team on making those tools. Because that is a really needed if we want to sell to a clinical side of the business. So that's the starting point. So and obviously, so going forward, I think the Mayo is a big thing. So because it's ranked as a #1 hospital in the world, and it's the best reference in this industry what you can get. And after that, winning those multiple other nice institutions. So really proud on that.
Yeah. On a more current event today, you announced a new clinical customer in Turkey, and that customer already had digitalization in place, and then they built AI on top of that, right? Is this a typical for your customers, or how would you describe it?
Well, I think, as I said many times in the presentation, so AI is a hot topic, and they've been testing. So I think typically why we win, so that there's individuals who wants to use and build the AI models, and as we have this create platform, so we can provide the tools for them. But on the other hand, the same people are the decision makers on the clinical side. And for that purpose, so they need more ready-made tools which have these certifications in place. So and I think they go hand by hand. But the Turkish hospital really good. So it's not probably our focus market at the moment, but I would say that our focus market are these kind of leading hospitals in the world. So and if we take top 10 hospitals in the world, so I would say 5, 6 are using us in some shape or form.
Your business depends on this new market developing and building. So what kind of positive or negative surprises have you had with this market formation?
Well, I think everybody was expecting the market to open faster, so that's for sure. But on the other hand, so I think the vendors were not ready to provide the tools that the customers needed. And there was a lot of work to be done to really be able to provide the information so that they can trust that the information is correct, and then you provide the information what they actually need for decision making.
Yeah. You recently announced the Page partnership. So can you talk a little bit about more that partnership, and can you say who is in the driver's seat in that?
Well, so we are reselling Page's AI models. So Page is one of those kind of leading companies in the industry. So as you may know, so it was a big investment from a Goldman Sachs and KKR and a couple of other companies. So they raised something like 250 million valuation over $1 billion some point of a time. But now they are focusing on providing an AI model. So they are giving away the image management system, and it's a strong one because they have an access to Memorial Sloan Kettering database and all of those slides. So there's millions of slides that they can build on. They are quite strong on kind of innovating the new things in the foundation model area, and it's kind of a small add on our offering. But it's a good company, and we are happy to partner. But we are leading the sales cycles, and it will be kind of integrated to our image management or viewer what we are having. So that so it's a kind of a subcontractor for us in a way, but in a positive way.
Yeah. In the US, there's been some friction with the FDA approvals for clinical applications. So how do you expect this to be solved?
Well, let's see. They all say that the new administration comes and make some changes, but the fact is that currently the FDA is requiring a pixel pathway, and that means that you need to have the same scanner, so that doing the digitization, then you need to have a viewer in the same process and the kind of a screen on the same process, and then the AI. So you need to kind of approve that whole combination at once. And if something is changing, the scanner is changing, and customer wants to have something else, so then it's not anymore FDA approved. So that's the challenge currently. We are moving forward with that, so with the bigger partner, and sorting it out. But eventually they need to change the mind so that you can have a multiple components, and you need to kind of regulate certain elements of that process. But it's a working in a process, and yeah.
Are you on track with achieving your financial targets?
Yes.
Thank you.
We haven't given out our kind of targets for years, but so far we are moving forward as planned.
Good. Are you planning to collaborate with companies that provide the equipment for sample digitalization?
Well, short answer on that. So we are looking for the whole value chain, the workflow, and different companies on that. So because at the end of the day, as I said before, so the customers wants to buy a solution, not the single component of that workflow.
Okay, and you already mentioned your successes in France. The question is, in addition to Aiforia, Ibex seems to be succeeding in France. How do you perceive the competitive environment? So will there be a few winners or more of a fragmented market?
Well, to start with is that the market is big, so there's plenty of room for other players as well. But I would say that there's only a handful of companies who have a credible solution, because there's a lot of regulation in place, so you need to make sure that you have those in place, and then you are able to sell. And of course, I can claim so that what we can provide the customer, if we are in a face-to-face competition, we will win. But then probably there are a lot of kind of customer cases that we are not aware about. So and they have a room as well. So Ibex is it's an okay company from Israel, and Page from the US. So Visiopharm, a little bit with the older technology from Denmark, but a good company as well. But I would say that eventually there will be a handful of companies who are having some kind of a stronger position, and that's how the analysts are kind of seeing Aiforia, one of those kind of leading companies in the industry. But the market is big, so 3 billion slides.
Yeah. Okay, final question. What are the biggest risks regarding your scale-up?
Well, so can we do it quickly enough? So I think that's the thing. So that's why we are partnering with the multiple companies at the moment, so that we can spot the opportunities. Because if that happens, so that in 25, 26, 27, so if they are now we can handle those public tenders. So we have tens of them in a play, but if suddenly there's 100, so do we have immediately a capacity to kind of cover those? But to kind of fix that potential issue, so we have now 25 partners, reselling partners globally. So we haven't spoke about that too much. So, but we have one in Korea, we have one in Saudi, multiple ones in Europe. So that when the volume starts ramping up, so then the ecosystem will help. And then we've been partnering. You may have noticed the Google partnership. So that's a big one with the NIH thing. So and then with the multiple scanner manufacturers and industry players.
Jukka, thank you very much for the presentation and discussion. Next up, let's continue with Herantis Pharma.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Antti Vuolanto, and I'm the CEO of Herantis Pharma. And Herantis is about developing disease-modifying therapies to address Parkinson's disease and actually other neurodegenerative diseases as well. The necessary forward-looking statements, and then let's go into summary of Herantis. So our lead asset is called HER096, which is a peptidomimetic compound capturing the activity of a natural protein called CDNF. With HER96, we have great preclinical data demonstrating that yes, we are capturing the full activity of the protein, and we have demonstrated in clinical studies that we have a good safety profile, but essentially great brain penetration efficacy. We are currently running phase 1b clinical study. We are already preparing for phase 2 studies. But what makes us actually really unique is the background of the HER96. As mentioned, it's based on a protein called CDNF, and HER96 actually mimics the active side of that growth factor. And we have already completed a clinical study with CDNF with fairly advanced Parkinson's patients, 17 patients with intracranial administration of CDNF. And in that study, we were able to see clinical benefits, we were able to see biological changes, we were able to see very interesting biomarker profiles. The biggest challenge was that CDNF as a protein had to be administered intracranially. And now we have HER96 that we can administer subcutaneously. And with HER96, we, of course, we want to have a long-term effect with disease modification, so slowing or even stopping the progress of the process of mid-brain neuron degeneration. But what we have also seen in clinical and preclinical settings is a quick symptomatic improvement, which is very important for the drug development point of view. Parkinson's disease is an indication where we have a unmet clinical need. So the current treatments are able to treat the symptoms, but they don't actually affect at all on the disease progression. And the current therapies also have limited efficacy, so not all patients benefits from the treatment, or they have significant side effects. And as the disease progresses, at some point of time, the current treatments are not efficacious anymore, and nothing can stop or slow down the process of the neuron degeneration. So how we do that, how HER96 functions. Even though it's not known how or what triggers Parkinson's disease, we know quite a lot about the target neurons in the midbrain. And in those neurons, or in the surrounding of those neurons, there is a vicious cycle going on. First of all, we have their endoplastic reticulum stress within the neurons. We have also accumulation of toxic alpha-synuclein aggregates, which is a hallmark of Parkinson's disease pathology. And actually, the aggregates are also going extracellular, causing neuroinflammation in the surrounding microglial tissue. And these activated microglial cells secrete so-called pro-inflammatory cytokines, which makes the life of these target neurons even worse. And all of this results in decreased dopamine secretion, and in turn results in movement disorder. But with HER96, we can actually we target the endoplastic reticulum function. The target pathway there is unfolded protein response, UPR, so we are able to balance the proteostasis in the cells. And in preclinical settings, we have nicely shown that we are able to increase the survival of the neurons. We are able to decrease the amount of alpha-synuclein aggregates. We robustly alleviate neuroinflammation. And all of this results in increased or normalized dopamine secretion and very logically normalized motor function. So we are, in a way, very broad way addressing the Parkinson's disease pathology. About the data, we have really nice data set with HER96, and in these and this data has been prepared using a preclinical model that combines aging, alpha-synuclein pathology, and progressive disease. And in these graphs that you see here, the normal aged animals are the white, or the white bar represents them. The placebo-treated model animals are the red bar, and then the blue one is the HER96 treated animals. And now on the left-hand side, you see the effect on alpha-synuclein aggregates. And as you can see, the red bar is much higher than the white one. So the model is based on injection of alpha-synuclein aggregates. So it's not a surprise that in the model we have high number of those. But we can nicely bring that down with HER96 with treatment of 4 weeks subcutaneously. And actually at the same time, what we see with the neuroinflammation, again, elevated neuroinflammation markers with the placebo-treated animals, but actually very normalized situation with HER96 treatment. Very nice. But how about the dopamine system? So the first graph here represents the amount of dopaminergic neurons in the target area. And as you can see, we have a 50% decrease with the model, but we can nicely protect the neurons by using subcutaneous HER96, which actually results in completely normalized amount of dopamine in the target area. And not surprisingly, this results in normalized motor symptoms, which is maybe best visualized with a video. So the first mouse here is just a normal aged mouse walking a bar walking test for motor coordination, no problems there. The second one has the induced pathology, placebo treated, and as you can see, the model animal really has strong motor symptoms. And then the third animal is the model animal treated with HER96 for 4 weeks. And as you can see, we have a very clear effect on the motor symptoms. The treated animal is actually even quicker than the normal animal in this test. Extremely happy about these results, and this preclinical data has been really well received by the Pharma in our partnering discussions. Then into clinical data. So last year we completed the first clinical study with HER96, which was a single ascending dose safety study in healthy volunteers. First we had 6 dose cohorts between 10 to 300 milligrams subcutaneous injection in the abdomen area. Very clean safety profile. And then we had in part 2 12 elderly men and women from whom we also were able to take 1 single CSF sample, so as a measure for blood-brain barrier penetration in men. And the results are shown here. So in this graph, each individual point represents an individual. So we were able to take 1 sample at the predefined time point. And what you can see is that within the first 12 hours, we have a concentration between 50 to 100 nanograms per ml in these healthy individuals. And this concentration is matching with the concentration range that we have used in preclinical settings, providing good efficacy. So we are clearly within the therapeutic range. And this is very important data for us because the blood-brain barrier penetration is one of the bottlenecks in drug development for Parkinson's disease or other neurodegenerative diseases. And now we are running the phase 1b clinical study. We have actually completed already the first part, which is a single dose in healthy individuals to complement the previous data. Now we know how 1 single dose is behaving in humans, and we can use this data for designing phase 2 clinical study. We also had very nice safety profile. And right after the Christmas, we will start the part B. So we will recruit 24 Parkinson's patients, early to mid-stage Parkinson's patients in 2 dose cohorts, 200 and 300 milligrams. The study is placebo-controlled. Of course, mainly safety tolerability study, but of course important to study the pharmacokinetics of repeated dosing, study exploratory biomarkers, and also see if we have any effects on the signs and symptoms of Parkinson's disease. So we have a neurorestorative compound. We have easy route of administration. We already have very good safety profile. So we have very good position among the companies that are developing disease-modifying therapies for Parkinson's disease. Some words about markets and financing. So this slide summarizes the market opportunity of HER96. There are currently approximately 10 million people suffering from Parkinson's disease, 1 million or a bit more than 1 million in Europe and in US combined. We believe that there will be a market of at least 9 billion euros within these two main markets. This is for disease-modifying therapies for Parkinson's disease, and we believe that we have multi-billion market opportunity only in Parkinson's disease. And here is also good to remind you that HER96 and the target pathway that we are addressing, it's not specific for Parkinson's disease. We already have evidence with the CDNF growth factor in other neurodegenerative diseases, also in stroke, that we have there a good potential to utilize the same mechanism of action. About financing, I want to highlight the great achievement that the phase 1b clinical study is financed by a consortium of Michael J. Fox Foundation and Parkinson's UK with 3.6 million in cash of research financing. In addition to phase 1b, they support also some additional biomarker discovery work. Together with previously announced European Innovation Council accelerator financing, we have raised over 6 million euros of non-dilutive research funding during the past 18 months, which is of course great support for us. And we do have a commitment from EIC Fund for equity investments when we go forward. So currently we are running the phase 1b, we are preparing for phase 2, and we are seeking of course out-licensing collaboration with Pharma. And on that end, during the past 2 years, we have had meetings with 55 pharma companies, many of those face-to-face meetings. It seems that Herantis Pharma is very well known among the competition. We have personal relations with all the companies developing CNS therapeutics, and I think the discussions that we have been nicely progressing over the years. And good to remember that it takes always time to convince a pharma partner to make a deal. But of course, the objective of Herantis is to sign a major licensing deal, hopefully already based on phase 1b data, or if not then we will start phase 2 and continue our efforts there. Yep, by that I want to thank or end my presentation, and happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Antti. Please have a seat.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so let's start with the current phase 1 trial. So in part 1 you have been progressing quickly and as planned, and now part 2 is starting with Parkinson's disease patients. So kind of talking about your expectations of this second part, are there any differences between Parkinson's patients and healthy volunteers that you would think that may affect the next stage? For example, are there known differences in pharmacokinetics, for example, that you are kind of expecting to affect the results?
There shouldn't be any major difference between the healthy individuals and then Parkinson's patients. It can be that actually the brain penetration is higher with patients, as it is known that the blood-brain barrier can be a bit leaky with patients with neurodegenerative diseases. But good to remember that the healthy individuals, we have given one administration, and now in Parkinson's disease patients, they will receive 8 administrations over 4 weeks. So the setting is a bit different. And of course, having 1 month treatment with 8 administrations for the patients is important stepping stone towards phase 2 clinical study, where we will anyway dose the patients with several months in order to really show the efficacy of HER96 in Parkinson's disease.
And will you be locking the dosing in this phase 1, or is there maybe some kind of, will you be testing different dosages at phase 2 or regimes of administration?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we are currently collecting the data with the part 1 that is already completed with the phase 1b. We were able to collect information about how the one dose is behaving, and now we will confirm that with the patients, and based on those data we can then decide how many doses per week we will administer in phase 2. Most likely we are not going to test several different dosing regimes in phase 2, but we will fix that how many doses per week. But it's in a way the preclinical data plus the data with the healthy individuals plus the data that we collect with the Parkinson's patients, then we decide based on those data what is the dosing for phase 2.
One of the things that you're looking for now in phase 1 are the biomarkers. So if you think of the most positive case, so what can you get out of the biomarkers in the long term going to phase 2 and phase 3? What are the kind of most positive information and things you can get out of it?
Yeah. So on the biomarker side, we are concentrating on how HER96 affects the target pathway, which is a unique pathway for us. So we need to develop the biomarkers ourselves that are specific for HER96. And in an ideal setting, we would have a biomarker that has a clear change when HER96 administration takes place, or right after or hours after, so that we can see, we can demonstrate that HER96 actually hits the molecular target and does biologically what it is in a way meant to do. We are not trying to develop new disease biomarkers for Parkinson's disease, but specific for HER96, and that's important that we do that. And of course, if we would be able to develop such a biomarker, that would help further clinical development, but that would also strengthen our case towards partnering, because that's one of the key data that the Pharma is currently looking at when they are evaluating targets for licensing.
You've talked about also here today about the possible other indications for HER96, including, if I remember correctly, metabolic diseases in your R&D day. So can you talk a little bit more about the other indications, and are there kind of practical steps to be accepted, for example, preclinical trials?
Yeah, so it's well known in literature that unfolded protein response pathway, our target, is involved in many diseases, neurodegenerative diseases, other CNS diseases, and also, as you mentioned, outside of CNS, cardiac, metabolic. Of course, the ambition of the company is to start studies in those indications, and naturally first step is to have preclinical studies, demonstrate a reason to believe, so that we could progress those to the clinic. But currently the company is concentrating on the Parkinson's disease, and we hope that at some point of time when we have potentially the licensing deal, we have more resources to open up these other indications, some of them which are pretty sizable ones as well.
In an optimal case, how long would it take from you to get from end of phase 1 to start recruiting in phase 2? What kind of time frame are we talking about?
Yeah, the ambition of Herantis currently is to have readiness for phase 2 once we have the full results of phase 1b. So most likely when we announce the phase 1b results, we first announce the top line data, and then it will take some time longer to have the full biomarker data. And also the biomarker data is important for the phase 2 design, so we need to have the full data set before we can, in a way, have the final design of phase 2 available. but presumably it will take maybe 6 months once we from the point that we have the full data set in our hands. Hopefully a bit shorter time, but there are many moving parts and variables that we need to take into account. But even 6 months is considering drug development, that's rather quick.
Yes. And then in terms of funding, you have secured 15 million investment for phase 2 from the European Investment Bank. What kind of other parts for the funding do you need? Is it enough to get the partnership, or are there other routes than partnership deal?
Yeah, so the 15 million equity commitment from EIC fund is actually such a it's structured in a way that they can provide 1/3 of any subsequent financing round. So in a way, it's if we raise 45 million, they can cover 15 million. And from that 15 million, we have now covered 1.5 million in a financing round that we did actually exactly a year ago. So we have 13.5 million in a way left in that bucket. For the phase 2 financing, of course, once we are ready with phase 1b, we will discuss, negotiate with Pharma, and then we need to decide whether we finance the phase 2 with Pharma, or shall we out-license the asset to Pharma that they will take care of the phase 2, or shall we finance the phase 2 ourselves? So there are multiple options that we need to investigate once we are ready to start a phase 2.
Okay, final question. As mentioned, there are some links between Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's, and now the Alzheimer's drugs are leading now, and there's I think two drugs in the market. So have you heard any relevant news from that area now recently during the past months that are kind of relevant for Herantis or the development of Parkinson's disease? Are there any interesting news?
There are, absolutely. So there are many similarities between Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and one of the similarities is the accumulation of the toxic protein aggregates. In Parkinson's disease, alpha-synuclein; in Alzheimer's disease, beta-amyloid plaques. And these two drugs that are approved, they address the beta-amyloid plaques. So basically, protein aggregate, toxic protein aggregates. And now if we think about our mechanism of action, we are addressing the protein aggregates, but we are also addressing the cell stress and inflammation, which in a way most likely provides a better way of addressing the pathology as such. And this is actually this is an item that we have discussed with the Pharma, that they believe that what we have as a mechanism is more holistic and it's rather promising. And it seems like in Alzheimer's that even though these two drugs are approved, the efficacy is not great. It's a benefit, but not great, and there is much room for additional products. And we believe that we are in a way in a very good position that yes, if you treat part of the pathology, you can see benefit, but if you had a broader approach, how about that? And we are in that corner pretty alone currently within Parkinson's disease. So very strong position in that regard compared to the other companies developing disease-modifying therapies.
Thank you very much for the discussion, and best of luck for this final part of your current trial. So we will continue next with Faron Pharmaceuticals.
Hello everyone. My name is Juho Jalkanen. I'm the CEO of Faron Pharmaceuticals. We are a phase 2 immunotherapy company developing a cancer drug that would disarm cancer from its main source of protection and activate our own immune system to fight cancer. I know our story may be familiar to many of you, but there may be also new people to the audience, so let's give a proper introduction to the company. First of all, we will be making forward-looking statements, so standard disclaimer. What can you find in Faron? Actually, it's over 30 years of world-leading science in tumor biology, leukocyte trafficking, put together now into this new drug we're going to talk about. We also have on board some of the most or best expertise in finances for a biotech with our CFO, Yrjö Wickman. And I have to mention recent new recruit, Petri Pono, Chief Medical Officer, one of the best people in oncology drug development from Finland. But ultimately, as Antti mentioned in the beginning, this is a global arena, so it can't be done just out of Finland. I want to introduce to you our scientific advisory board, which is absolutely amazing. Top names on the planet. These are the people that even big pharma go to ask for advice, and they will be helping us in developing this drug. So, we are a first-in-class anti-clever antibody. Our main mission is to actually establish, it's named bexmarilimab, I'm going to call it Bex. Our main mission is to establish Bex as the cornerstone treatment for all cancers that are Clever-1 positive, and that's actually around 30% of all cancers, so it's a big number. The thing with Clever-1, it's a master regulator, a checkpoint on the macrophage. The purpose of a macrophage is to go around, scavenge debris, foreign matter, bacteria, cancer, if you have it, and eat that, clean up, and present that to the immune system. Now, in a growing cancer, there's a lot of dying cells, a lot of cleaning up to do, and when you have these Clever-1 positive macrophages, the problem is that these macrophages do not present what they eat to the immune system. Instead, they hide away the tumor, and that's how the tumor can grow without the immune system knowing of it. So when you hit Clever-1 with Bex, instead of hiding the tumor, the macrophage starts presenting the tumor to the immune system, and the immune system can attack it. So this drug could be widely applicable to a number of cancers, but the sweet spot really seems to be a disease called MDS, myelodysplastic syndrome, where there's now an accelerated possibility for even approval. I'm going to walk you through that. Well, first of all, on the left-hand side, this is Finnish biobank data. Each dot is a patient. If you're red, you're Clever high expressing. If you're blue, you're Clever low expressing. So basically, everybody in AML and MDS, and these are types of leukemia, everybody is Clever positive. And these cancers, in layman terms, are cancers of the macrophage lineage. So the macrophages have gone wild, all of them are expressing Clever-1, and these are very treatment-resistant cancers, and nothing seems to work in these patients that relapse to standard of care. And here we can really help. So actually, many of you may not know that one of the deadliest cancers of all is relapsed refractory MDS. The prognosis is only 5 to 6 months, which is it's nothing. And the remaining of your life, you're in and out of the hospital, you're deeply anemic, neutropenic, you have constant infections, you need IV antibiotics, you need blood transfusions. So very expensive patients also for the society. And the first line treatment for this population would be an HMA, a hypomethylating agent. It's an old class of drugs, basically a form of chemo. The problem is that 50% do not respond at all to HMAs, and The other half that respond, 80% relapse within a year or two, and after that, there's basically no effective treatment option. So let's look into this a bit more in detail. First of all, on the left-hand side, that's currently from Evaluate, an industry-leading market intelligence provider, showing that the MDS market is around 1.1 billion annually, but it's expected to grow up to 4 billion with new drugs coming to the market. Now, basically how the treatment paradigm and patient flows goes is that there's a pretty big prevalent population of MDS. Half roughly is low risk and half is high risk. If you're a low risk patient, you're usually okay with getting growth factors, blood transfusions, erythropoiesis stimulating agents, but ultimately 30 to 40% progress to high risk. And if you're a high risk patient, you need to get to a bone marrow transplant to be cured. Otherwise, it's a deadly condition and aggressively progressing disease. The problem is such a small amount of patients get to a bone marrow transplant. Ultimately, everybody else, so the vast majority, gets on to an HMA, a hypomethylating agent. Again, as I just said, 50% do not respond, and the majority relapse on the treatment. After that, you can try another HMA. There's a couple on the market. You can try conventional chemo, a very old drug named hydroxyurea. There is just one recent approval in this area. It's for an IDH inhibitor, so a targeted therapy for a specific mutation, but that's only around 3 to 5% of the population. It got approval with only 18 patients in phase 2. That's just to show the big need for something new for these patients. So we did a little bit of market research, and here's presented what's available for MDS, basically their cost per month for the patient or the hospital or the society. Just to mention that you see that some of these, or quite a number of these drugs, are not even sold in Europe because the benefit they bring is questionable. But the purpose of this slide that these drugs can be highly priced. So we also went out and asked, well, given the profile of bexmarilimab, what this drug could possibly, be acceptable. And it was shown across the board that a pretty high price is very acceptable in the US being the absolute main market for new drugs. And then we also went out to ask from physicians, doctors treating MDS, would you be likely to prescribe? And this is the estimate, what would the uptake of Bex be in the US? And just to mention, this is now incidence, not prevalent patients, so only new patients coming each year to that prevalent population. So up to 9,000 new patients every year would be treated, and the uptake of something new like Bex would be very quick. So what do we actually bring to the table? Because this is the profile that was presented to the payers and treating physicians in the US. On the left-hand side, it's currently the situation, currently what's available. As mentioned, old, toxic drugs that really do not seem to work. Survival is dismal, and the problem is nobody really gets into remission, and remission is needed to be eligible for a transplant. On the right-hand side is our current phase 2 results. So what have we brought to the table? First of all, since we play with the immune system, get the immune system attacking the cancer, we're not a toxic agent. So the safety profile is very good. It's a well-tolerated drug. We have actually taken that dismal survival of 5.6 months to 13.4 months. And one of the best things with this drug is we bring the majority of patients into remission. And again, remission is the first step to go into a bone marrow transplant. So 20%, give or take, have moved on to get a bone marrow transplant, which is a possibility for cure from this otherwise deadly condition. And the rate limiting thing is not BEX, it's the availability of transplants. So really what we're looking at is a possible game changer for these patients. Since phase 2 is actually coming to its end, and we're going to talk about that, but we took this data to the FDA asking, it's looking good, isn't it? What next? And we proposed a phase 3 in this relapsed refractory setting. What the FDA came back with us was actually that they blessed us with a fast track and said, and phase 3 would not necessarily be required in the relapsed refractory setting, but the phase 2 population could be the registrational population, and there's accelerated approval possibility. But a confirmatory phase 3 should be ran, that's nowadays always needed, should be ran in the frontline high-risk population. So this is basically laying it out, the entire development plan from here to approval according to the discussions with the FDA. A lot of abbreviations, a lot of stuff going on, but just highlighting that in the light blue there, that's the current ongoing phase 2 in relapsed refractory, and that could lead to accelerated approval in this population. And then a confirmatory phase 3 study would be needed in the frontline population, which is a good thing because actually it brings a bigger population to BEX rather quickly. So for us, this was amazing news, and this, of course, has attracted the eye of pharma as well. But from the eyes of an investor, like I said, a lot of stuff going on this slide. So let's look at it from a different angle. So these are the key highlights that are coming next from that slide. There'll be further phase 2 data coming out at the American Society for Hematology just in a short time. We already released the top line data, and it was, as expected, at 80% response rate. We are on track of having the phase 2 enrollment completed in January, and 2 to 3 months after that, we will have the first response rate readout. Then we'll go into an end of phase 2 meeting with the FDA and seeking breakthrough designation as well. With the positive phase 2 meeting, that would actually kickstart the phase 3. And ultimately, as the survival and follow-up data comes in from the current phase 2, we could possibly start talking the accelerated approval of BEX with the FDA. Fast tracks allows rolling submission, for example. So just last bullet here, we've now proven that we can overcome resistance to standard of care in MDS and actually also AML, but we will hopefully during next year have first data showing that we could overcome the resistance to PD-1s, which are the market leaders in immunotherapy for cancer. So actually, Faron as a business or investment case, Antti showed some nice slides of value inflections of biotechs. We're right there. This is the value inflection moment, basically. On the left-hand side, that's general acquisition value of biotech from depending on the development stage. And we're right there at the value inflection. And with this level of response already in the phase 2 is basically positive. This is no longer a binary investment. Is it positive or negative? It's already positive, basically, if you look at the numbers. And ultimately, what do biotechs usually fail on? It's safety or efficacy. We've treated over 250 patients. The drug is well tolerated, so safety is not a concern. And if you look at the efficacy, as mentioned, basically the phase 2 is already positive. So we're looking at a very exciting time here in the company. Thank you.
Thank you, Juho, and welcome.
Good to see you, Antti.
Please have a seat.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, so let's start with the upcoming time points. You mentioned you have readout at the end of Q1, and then you have different time points then during next year, and at the end of Q3 you have a readout as well. Do I remember correctly?
Well, then around Q3 comes the duration of response, which will be very important for the FDA, and also survival data comes in. Survival data may take even longer because what we're seeing is patients seem to do awfully well on the drug and live a long time on the drug. So that's going to be continuously coming in as time flows by.
Okay. Can you describe a little bit, like now you're doing a readout of all of the patients, what will that data give you concretely to work with? And then you have the duration of response, so, and that's important for the FDA. And so what will you do then after that readout? Can you describe a little bit of this path?
Yes, so as mentioned, this is going to be a rolling process with the FDA. First of all, they're going to look at the response rate. It needs to be there. And in early development, especially in hematology, there's been drugs that had showed good response rate, but the duration of response has been short. With our drug, it's good, it's long, and also the survival. So FDA is very keen to see that the response rate, but then that the duration of the response lasts, and that has an impact on survival. That's what they're going to be looking at as we go into this process.
Yes. So then there's a question on the first-line patients. You didn't mention about those patients in the recent top-line readout, so or the top-line data. So are you planning to do some intermediate readout at the end of Q1, or what is your plan for those patients?
So frontline. So those who don't know, we're also recruiting frontline patients to size the phase 3 in the frontline. But that will come out around the end of Q1 as well.
Okay.
The top line readout for the first line patients.
About the same time or exactly the same time. Yeah. Good. There's a question on funding. What is the approximately the extra funding required before partner deal, over or under 10 million euros?
That's a very good question, and it cannot be directly answered because the thing is evolving constantly as we speak. Maybe nothing, it may be 10, it may be something around that. But this thing is a dynamic situation we're in. But on funding, what we publicly stated is that we're actually funded until the beginning of June, but we have venture debt, which a lot of you are familiar with, IPF partners from Switzerland. We're going to be hitting the covenant level around the time the phase 2 readout comes.
And I guess it would be fair to say that your data for discussing the partnership will be then much better at the end of Q1 compared to now the upcoming ASH. You will have more data and that will help you with the discussions, I guess.
That is correct, but ultimately, like I've said to the market actually, is that usually as the patient population grows, the response rate declines a bit. We have not seen that. It remains exceptionally high. It's looking awfully good on that front as well.
Yes. As mentioned, the overall response rate is 80% currently. Is it possible to comment on the quality of the responses? That is also very important.
Some of the new patients, they're being very short on the treatment, but on the quality, most of them are remissions, actual remissions, because also hematological improvement qualifies for a response. Mainly we have remissions. We also do see hematological improvement in these patients, which is very important for the patients, but we hit basically a higher bar than just hematological improvement. We hit remissions.
Yes. There's another question on partnering discussions. So you previously mentioned that you have received some contacts and proposals. So is it possible to say anything about kind of the valuation or numbers regarding those contacts?
What I can say about that is that the core for a biotech valuation is the market forecast, which I gave some elements about. The most important elements were presented here. We're pretty eye to eye on the market potential.
Yeah. What could still go wrong? In other words, what are the biggest risks and pitfalls going forward?
I get asked that a lot, and to be really honest, it's getting more and more difficult to see what can go wrong. As mentioned, most important is safety. I would say that's bagged. Efficacy just continues each time we look at the data, continues strong. Doesn't give me a worry. To me, this is now a business case. It's not about the science, the data. It's optimizing the valuation, optimizing the business case. And the thing in pharma is money makes money, or in business in general, money makes money. So to have a strong balance sheet is likely to give us a better position.
Yes, and a question on SAB. How did you manage to get a scientific advisory board that you currently have?
That blows me away as well, because the thing is that having been so much in the industry, and I know that a lot of these pharma companies are after these same people, and they get a request every week basically, and they say no to everybody. But these guys come for something truly groundbreaking, something that will change how cancer is treated. That's what these guys come for, and that's what they've seen in this drug.
Yes. Have you been invited to JP Morgan conference?
Yes, we have.
Okay, that's clear. And there's one more question. So you already touched a little bit on the interactions with the FDA, but can you recap, like, what are the next interactions or known interactions with the FDA that you will have?
As soon as we have, again, the readout around the end of Q1, we'll need to package that up into it's called a briefing book, and that will be for the end of phase 2 meeting, and that's going to happen sometime in Q2. Lead times for those are usually a bit lengthy, so as soon as we got the data in hand, we're going to put that package together and submit to the FDA and request that meeting time.
Okay, and you showed also in your presentation the start of the phase 2-3 MDS trial. So can you go over through again? When do you expect the first patient recruitment if everything goes smoothly?
Yes, so we've laid this program or discussed this program already with the FDA, but at the end of the phase 2 meeting, it's also the phase 3 protocol that's being submitted, and they will have their input on the protocol. So we need to take that into account. As soon as that round of discussions has been completed and we take FDA's input into the protocol, we can start actually initiating that trial. But from the moment, basically the protocol is stamped, it's 6 months to first patient in. And that's still like an aggressive timeline. But from getting the FDA stamp on the protocol, 6 months to first patient in. Yeah. Usually 6 to 8, but I think because we got everything in motion.
Yeah, and it's fast track.
Yeah.
And then a question on today's report. So can you explain a little bit? Does it mean that you will kind of have a fast track type of status in the UK, or what does it mean?
Yes. Actually, it's basically the equivalent to a FDA fast track is this MHR iLab. It's a fast track for the UK, basically.
Okay. Okay, so those are all of the questions. I thank you, Juho, for presentation and discussion. Many thanks for you, viewers and listeners, and we'll be back next year. Thank you for listening.